transparency of only one interaction or one transaction for all the different interactions, all the different products that you use on Vesu. And one of the main value adds is that Vesu is a fully governance-less DeFi protocol. That means the Vesu team and anyone doesn't play a role. There is no governance. There is no gatekeepers between users, between builders and the protocol. So speaking to you builders, you can just come and build on Vesu. There is no questions that you really have to ask us. There is nothing that we can prevent you from building because it's all fully open and permissionless. And so I'm really excited to be here, and I hope, and I'm excited for all the different projects that we will see on Vesu, built on Vesu, but also on DeFi in general, Starknet. For this workshop, I want to start a little bit with diving into DeFi, some high-level stuff. What is DeFi? Why are we all building DeFi? And then give a short overview of the ecosystem on Starknet, the DeFi ecosystem on Starknet, opportunities, talk about some projects that definitely have been pushing the boundaries on Starknet, and then also speak a bit about our journey and what we think are the points that you should consider when you start building a DeFi app. And so let's get started. So what is DeFi? I'm pretty sure everyone here by now, you do know why you're here. You do know what DeFi is, but I don't think you can highlight that enough. Ultimately, what we do in DeFi is we offer users to interact with other users without actually knowing them, right? And not just interacting by texting and communicating, but actually with something that's very important and precious, with your assets, with your wealth, right? So you can own crypto, and you can use your crypto, you can earn on your crypto, all without knowing actually whom you're interacting with. And that's really a big unlock. So it always blows my mind, again, at least if you think about that you're entrusting your assets to other people without actually knowing them. And so that's all, they're kind of centers around this thing. How can we actually make this product work where we allow other users to use our assets? And so everything we do in DeFi, all the mechanisms, all the protocols we design, centers around this question of being fully open, permissionless, and anonymous. And so just on a very high level, kind of how all, DeFi works by now, or one of the main unlock or models that DeFi has brought is liquidity pooling. So you have different users across the globe on the internet, in the case of lending, but also for other use cases. Actually, there is a lender, there is a borrower. You see the lender on the right-hand side here, the borrower on the left-hand side. Those are both anonymous people. We just see accounts interacting with DeFi protocols or smart contracts. And the lender has, in the case of lending markets, the lender has some crypto asset that they don't need at the moment, but that they would like to earn yield on or interest on for lending markets. And on the other hand, there is a borrower. The borrower has a use case, needs more crypto for some reason. There are various reasons why you would want to borrow, for instance. But another example can also be just users swapping and trading assets on a DEX. So those are anonymous people. How, in the lending case, can I actually allow someone to just borrow my assets without knowing them? So what DeFi has come up with is this model of pooled liquidity. So there is a smart contract, a DeFi protocol that accepts the deposits of lenders. Lenders can just supply their crypto, in this example here, USDC, into this liquidity pool. They deposit their crypto in a smart contract. So the smart contract now manages their liquidity, and they expect to get their liquidity back with interest. On the other hand, we have the borrower, and now the borrower needs USDC, and the borrower can go to this crypto, to this DeFi protocol, and borrow USDC there. But there is one condition that is enforced by the smart contract, and this condition is that in order to borrow, the user has to deposit a security, a collateral, another asset, and only if he returns the borrowed amount, he can also retrieve his collateral asset again. And so there is this one contract or multiple contracts which implement exactly this behavior, and this enforces one specific invariant in this case, which is the depth of a position, the value of the depth of a position always has to be smaller than the value of the collateral in the position. And so there is an incentive for the borrower to actually repay the debt in order to retrieve his collateral again. And so this one condition here, or invariant, is what enables this model of anonymous borrowing and lending, right? Because otherwise there would not be an incentive to actually repay your debt. This, example here is for a lending market, but it is pretty similar for other DeFi protocols, DeFi verticals too, where you have a bunch of contracts. They oftentimes accept deposits, and then they enforce a certain invariant, ensuring that whoever deposited their money gets their money back. So another example, for instance, is a DEX, decentralized exchange, where the lenders effectively are the liquidity providers, and the borrowers here, even though, of course, the model is different, you could see as the swappers. So this kind of common model is a foundational concept in DeFi. And what does this actually mean? What does this unlock, right? Why do we do DeFi? Ultimately, it's about removing the human element and removing trust in humans from financial services, from financial products, and instead having immutable or having trustless code programs that implement effectively the rules of that financial product. And that's really interesting because here in this table, as you see, it allows us to actually offer a much better product than what the traditional financial intermediaries actually offer, like banks, right? So for instance, in comparing, a DeFi lending protocol here to a bank, if you interact with a bank, if you deposit money in a bank, your counterparty is the bank, and you trust the counterparty that it will manage your funds in an appropriate way, such that you can always get it back, right? And there is a lot of rules, regulation, and regulators around banks, which should ensure that they manage in this way, such that users' deposits or such that customers' deposits are safe, right? In DeFi, we implement a set of rules, we implement smart contracts that enforce those rules. And as long as those smart contracts are sound and secure, there is not really a counterparty other than the smart contract itself, right? So that reduces one important risk, which is counterparty risk. In the bank example, usually, you can borrow, or oftentimes you can borrow with less than 100% collateral, or without over collateralization. And in DeFi, you usually have to over collateralize. And so this is exactly what we talked about before. This is what enables this anonymous model, right? In banks, you have to do KYC. In DeFi, we don't do KYC. We don't even want to have your information, right? We don't need your information. So that allows for a much better UX too. I don't have to go through KYC before I can use this financial product. And then another example where it's really different. Oftentimes fees and interest rates and other things are defined by the bank itself. They can change interest rates, and in an autonomous DeFi protocol like Vesu, this is purely market driven. There is no one that has to manually change interest rates and all those things. So it's fully autonomous. I don't want to go into all of the items here. Another thing, though, for lending markets in particular, again, liquidation, if there is a bad loan, these go through a very long process. So it involves courts, it involves liquidators, and so on. That can take years. In DeFi protocols, liquidations happen very frequently, on-chain, fully autonomous again. And one thing that's in terms of product really cool too, we have in DeFi, we have access to the global market, right? Building a DeFi protocol, a truly decentralized DeFi protocol, your limits in terms of reach where you can offer this product is kind of the internet, right? So wherever someone has access to the internet, people have access to that protocol. And also, we all know banking hours. It's crazy to think for us that a product is only available 9 to 5 on business days, and with holidays. DeFi protocols, they just run 24/7, 365 days of the year, and so this is really a big unlock in terms of UX ultimately. So when we speak about DeFi, what do we really mean? There are a number of sectors within which DeFi protocols operate. And so this graphic here just shows all of those sectors. See those boxes here. On the left-hand side, liquid staking, then lending in the middle here, bridges, DEXs, restaking, and so on. And so you see those boxes, they have the size, proportional to the TVL. And so you could argue in terms of TVL, the size of those boxes reflects the importance of a DeFi sector. And so you find the main DeFi sectors in this graphic here. The data is from DeFi Llama, so you can verify all of that. So liquid staking is one of the main, or is the biggest DeFi sector across EVM DeFi protocols. And so liquid staking involves Lido, so rep staked ETH. On Starknet, we actually have our own staking and LST products like Endor or Nimbura. And then the second largest sector in DeFi is lending. So lending is one of the DeFi primitives, and many different strategies actually build on lending. And in terms of the big players in lending, you see here Always is the biggest by far, and then somewhere here, hopefully very soon, you will see Vesu and other lending markets on Starknet. What else do we have? We have DEXs, which you all know, restaking, a big a vertical, a big sector that grows a lot. We have liquid restaking, LRTs, connected to restaking, of course, CDPs, so stable coins that are over collateralized, like Maker, or on Starknet there is Opus and the stablecoin Cash. And then there are various yield generating protocols. So here, yield splitting, like Pendle, you split a yield bearing token into a principal token, a fixed income token, and then a variable yield token. Farming real world assets, also a sector that is growing a lot. And then there are others like derivatives and so on. So this gives kind of an example or kind of an overview of how important the different DeFi verticals are, and where you find opportunities to actually build on. Another important aspect of DeFi is to understand the full DeFi stack. So when we build a DeFi app, what does that usually involve? Or also how different DeFi protocols build on each other. And so this graphic here of the DeFi stack has been published in a paper by the Bank of International Settlement. And you see here different layers of how DeFi protocols usually are organized. And of course, the basic layer is the settlement layer. So that's the chain, Ethereum, or Starknet. And if you think about L2s, L1s, and L2s, you already actually have to create different layers within this layer itself, right? And so on the app layer, kind of, you also have different levels. So the basic layer that every DeFi protocol builds on is assets. So DeFi is financial products, and that builds on financial assets or crypto assets, right? And so everything we do somehow involves using crypto assets to do one or the other thing, right? So that's kind of the basic layer. DeFi protocols then are the second layer, and within DeFi protocols, usually you find also a hierarchy. On the very basis, you have lending protocols and you have DEXs. Those play a big role in many different DeFi strategies and other DeFi protocols that build on top. And then you have derivatives, which oftentimes use lending markets or DEXs. And you have yield strategies or yield vaults and yield on protocols that also build on these other primitives. And this is what you, for instance, also see here in the third layer, aggregators that also play a big role. And on the top layer, you find front ends. So every DeFi app involves a smart contract layer, the liquidity pool that we talked about before, implemented as Cairo contracts on Starknet. But then for users to interact with that protocol, there needs to be a front end. So the front end is an integral part in every DeFi app. And so this kind of concludes the whole stack, right? Just one note to this, as said, this has been published by the Bank of International Settlement. So that means regulators also have a good understanding of that stack. And at the moment, they are also analyzing where to best actually regulate DeFi. And so there is a lot that is still to be seen how DeFi will be able to continue to operate in on a global scale. And then just putting into perspective where we stand with DeFi at the moment, TVL in DeFi is a bit bigger now than the 240 billion, but it's still very small compared to finance overall. And so that means the market opportunity is very big. It's huge, right? So DeFi, if DeFi actually grows and continues to grow how it did, you know, there is a lot of sectors and there is a lot of opportunity for DeFi protocols. So this just gives a little bit a overview of where DeFi is in terms of its market size. So now probably much more interesting, why would we build on Starknet, right? That's why we are all here. That's why Vesu is here, why we actually came to Starknet. And so I personally think there are three very important points why someone should consider to build DeFi on Starknet. And the first is Starknet has unmatched scalability, if you want, as an L2, and it has Ethereum security. So that means you actually get the best of both worlds. You get scale, you can scale with your user demand, but you also have the Ethereum security. So you don't actually need to make this trade-off to in another direction. So this means Starknet has one of the lowest fees, transaction fees, in the L2 world, and that directly translates to good UX. So for users on DeFi apps on Starknet, you're not limited a lot by the gas fees. In terms of UX, another reason why we came to Starknet, with native account abstraction, we are at the point where we see, you know, fintech-like or Web 2 like UX on DeFi apps. So you can build really cool products which really come close to Web 2 UX already. And we see that, for instance, with wallets on Starknet. So the wallets on Starknet really offer an unmatched UX, I would say, across the DeFi landscape. And they already come very close to a fintech app. If you think, for instance, about the Argent wallet, you have a very secure wallet where you can grow your crypto assets. You swap with Avnu seamlessly. You can now invest directly with your wallet, so you can earn yield, for instance, on your assets through Vesu and other DeFi apps. And now also you have a credit card, where you can actually spend your crypto. So that's actually what you usually find in fintech apps, but it's all non-custodial. So that's the best of both worlds, right? And the third point that I think is really important too, if you think about building a DeFi app, because at some point you have to think about how you bootstrap your user base, is DeFi Spring, the program that the Starknet Foundation has been running since March 24. And so as a builder myself, and having grown Vesu to the third largest protocol, I can really say that this program has been designed very well. In particular, the duration of this protocol, that it runs for such a long time, gives users a lot of predictability, allows builders to actually bootstrap a user base, and this is very important, in particular if you see the competition also across different chains, right? And so DeFi Spring, definitely one very important reason why building a DeFi app on Starknet makes a lot of sense. And of course, this is a temporary thing. So DeFi Spring continues to run for the next month or so. And within that time, as a builder and as projects, we get the ability to actually bootstrap a user base and start to operate organically without depending on external rewards. So those are 3 reasons why we decided to come to Starknet and build on Starknet. And I think the past year has proven that this was the right decision, at least for us. Here, we just see, and probably all know that, we see how Starknet has grown, how TVL has evolved, and so that has been a big kind of growth in 24 for Starknet DeFi, and we are, sure we'll see this metric to continue to grow. Starknet ecosystem. This map shows all of Starknet's apps, actually. So you see also non-DeFi apps here in the center. You see the DeFi apps that we have on Starknet. So it's like already a very packed ecosystem map, and we already have DeFi protocols in all of the verticals that we talked about before. So in the DEX space, there is a lot of DEXs already and aggregators, money markets or lending markets, which is where we'd also find Vesu. Also here, there is a lot of protocols that are building and pushing the space. And we also find in this segment here CDP. So for instance, Opus, which I briefly mentioned before too. So there is stable coins, there is lending markets, there is DEXs, there is LSTs, liquid staking tokens with Nimbora and Endure. There is derivatives with Carmine. There is what some call lottery, but it's a no loss lottery protocol bounty, similar to Pool Together. So there is a lot of builders already in the space, and I just want to highlight 2 protocols here, which you probably have heard about already. One is Ekubo, a DEX, and it's the number 2 app by TVL on Starknet, has grown to 60 million TVL. It is governed by the Ekubo DAO, which is very active and very transparent about all of their work. So you find very insightful treasury reports and so on. And so what's interesting, this is actually the first Uniswap v4 app or protocol that's in production. And if you are familiar with Uniswap v4, it brings a number of very cool features, very important features, making it one of the most efficient, if not the most efficient DEX on Starknet. So concentrated liquidity is one thing to highlight. Flash accounting, which makes the protocol very gas efficient and also offers a lot of features like kind of native flash swaps or flash loans. And one very interesting feature here too, in particular for a hackathon, for instance, is its hooks. So you can build extensions, you can build customizations of Ekubo pools by implementing Ekubo hooks. And so there are a number of extensions actually have already been shipped by the DAO itself. For instance, an Oracle pool which offers a Ekubo Oracle, so that allows everyone to just create a new DEX pool and have an Oracle for your asset out of the box. And so with these hooks, you can build much more customizations, and that's of course very interesting for a hackathon. The other protocol I want to mention here is Vesu, and of course I'm biased because we built Vesu, but I want to highlight a couple of things here, mostly that, as I said before, there is no governance, so everyone can just come and build on Vesu. Then in terms of architecture, it's kind of similar to Ekubo actually, and so that's why they pair very well together. But it's built for lending and not for DEX. But a lot of the design decisions and the architecture have been informed by Uniso v4. That means fully permissionless, so everyone can just come and create their own lending pools without having to ask a DAO or a team or anyone. There is also a UI for that, where risk curators are able to create new lending pools with the existing extensions or with the existing pool implementations. All those markets are fully autonomous. That means there is no one who actually has to manually set rates, update interest rates, and stuff. So everything's fully autonomous. And then similar to Ekubo, and that's again why I think those two protocols are very interesting to build on, is Vesu 2 has hooks system which allows developers to create custom pools. So you can now innovate on various pool behaviors. For instance, you can create a new lending pool which implements a specific liquidation model, or a lending pool which implements a more efficient interest rate model, or you can create a lending pool for real world assets which may require KYC or permissioned borrowing or supplying of assets. So you can build all sorts of things by implementing these lending hooks. And yeah, I also want to mention the source code is all open and available on a public GitHub repository. So that's also one very important aspect when you build an app, having access to the source code. And so I'm coming to the end, actually, slowly. I'm trying to summarize the main steps that we usually go through when we build a DeFi app. And I think it always starts with identifying an opportunity, and that's what you have done already, I guess. That's what the first week has been about. The product that you actually want to build, identifying a gap, identifying something new, cool that you could build in DeFi. And then with that opportunity, you also you identify kind of the skills that you need to actually build that. And with this, you come to the second step and you assemble your team. Which people do you need to actually build this DeFi app? And I think if you're really serious about that, it involves a number of skills building a DeFi app. One is, of course, simply the tech skills. So you have to be able to write the Cairo contract or write front end code. And so there is already different tech stacks involved. But then also DeFi ultimately is a financial infrastructure, right? And so working in this domain requires some understanding of, for instance, the regulatory environment, right? What can we do? What can we not do? What should we do? What should we not do? You don't want to make some, obvious mistakes. And so it involves much more skills and resources than, I want to say just the technical skills. But once you have assembled your team, once you have all this together, you start building, right? And you write your Cairo contracts, you write the protocol, you write your front end that users can interact with your protocol. And you come to a point where you are kind of feature complete, right? So at this point, you start testing. And of course, there is a continuous testing involved while you're building already, but you start, let's say, with integration tests, right? The front end and your smart contracts have to interact with each other. Maybe there is a backend involved and so on. And so you come to a stage where you deploy on testnet, probably. And so when you build your DeFi app, and in particular, also if this builds on another DeFi protocol, it's important already from the beginning to understand how you can test your protocol once you kind of have built it, right? So for instance, not all of the DeFi apps on Starknet are also available on testnet, but that's a very important part if you want to end-to-end test your protocol. So that's one thing that is important to clarify already at the very beginning. If I'm building, let's say on Vesu, is Vesu actually available on a testnet? Can I use and can I play with it on testnet before I go to mainnet? And then the next step, it's also something that developers often, forget. Once you're ready, you're done testing with integration tests and all, you should think about auditing your code base. And that's a very important part because, again, we said DeFi, it's about other people's crypto assets. And so security and trust is, of course, a really important aspect to attract liquidity, for instance, in your DeFi protocol. So audit and a security strategy in general is a very important part of building a DeFi app. And you should start thinking about that actually from day one, from the first stage. And you should also think about how you can fund an audit, because that's something, and that may be the first time that you require or that you work with an external team, so an auditing firm, right? And so I really want to stress this point that you include this from day one in your development process or in your just building a DeFi app process. Luckily on Starknet, for instance, there are a number of grants available from the Starknet Foundation, which can help you fund an audit, for instance, if you are at the stage where this really makes sense, right? And so it's really not that you're left alone with that. Also for the entire ecosystem, we know that security is really important. And then once this is through and once all the issues have been resolved from the audit, then you ship and you deploy your protocol on mainnet, and you're kind of at the finish line. Or you're not really, right? Because after you've deployed, the work only starts. And so let's also talk about a couple of things that you should consider post-launch. So the journey doesn't end when you have deployed, right? Your protocol runs there. Maybe it's immutable and fully autonomous, so you don't actually have to directly work on the code base, but also you still have a front end, and again, your security process continues. And I think that's one thing that people often forget, in particular in DeFi. Security really is not just having an audit, but security is something very important that continues as a process, in particular once you're live and once your protocol starts to attract liquidity, for instance. And so there are a number of aspects, a number of layers to security. So monitoring your protocol, suspicious activity, and then bug bounties. You want to have a white hat hacker reporting an issue that they identify, rather than a hostile hacker. And so bug bounty programs increase the chance that you find a white hat to actually report an issue, and this is always the much better outcome, of course. And then maybe you have additional contracts, periphery contracts that you continue to ship that unlock new UX, and of course also these contracts, or let's say, and if your code base is upgradable, also the upgrades, it's important that those are audited again. And so whenever you think about an upgrade, for instance, in your code base, if it's even possible, then also think about the audit and schedule the audit on time. For users, again, users kind of supply their assets in your protocol, so it's very important that they trust the DeFi app. And so having a point of access, having support somewhere where I can ask my questions as a user, somewhere where I get help and I'm not left in the dark, that's a very important element to build trust, right? So this, of course, also means efforts. This, of course, also means someone has to be there and answer the user's questions. One very helpful side effect of support is that you get to interact with users, right? And so from all those interactions, you should always try and learn, and you should always try and improve your protocol. That's very valuable feedback that you get. And so learn with your users, right? And iterate on your app. And if you can't iterate, or if your protocol is immutable, iterate on the front end and add more periphery contracts. I mean, add features on the periphery. And then finally, also, this is something that you actually should already start from day one. Think about the growth strategy. How can you bring, your protocol to a size where it's ultimately self-sustainable, where operations can be funded from fees or from whatever other mechanism. But we see there are operations that need to, continue throughout the entire lifetime of the protocol. And so think about funding these from day one is also very important. And so all of these points, that I went through here, and here are things that we put a lot of emphasis on Vesu, that we had a lot of learnings throughout our process. I don't want to go into more detail here, but here or in our Discord or Telegram, if you have questions about some of these things. And with that, I want to close this presentation. Thank you all for being here, and consider building on Vesu and help us grow Starknet.
Thank you very much, Niels. Thank you. We have a couple of questions from the audience. Maybe if we can take one or two,
Yeah.
if that's okay. So, I guess the first question I'm seeing in the chat is like, what are the top regions, countries most friendly to DeFi as far as regulation? Will USA get a lot of better in like in the next 4 years?
Well, I think that's what everyone expects, right? The US has been kind of a difficult place in the past. And I say that having lots of friends in the US and speaking to them, and many people in DeFi have been kind of afraid of, because there's a lot of uncertainty what you can do from the US and whatnot. And I think the environment will be more friendly towards crypto, definitely. But where are the most friendly regions? I don't know. To be honest, it's always very specific to the use case, to the DeFi app that you're working on. But I see a lot of builders in Europe, for instance, and I think one reason for that is also that in Europe there has been a more push for regulation, for clarity. What can we do to build in DeFi and whatnot? And so I think you see a lot of builders in Europe, but then there are also other regions, of course. Yeah, it's a difficult question, to be honest.
Yeah, definitely. Well, we'll see. We'll see how this goes in the next few years since there's a new president coming and maybe some regulation will be better. Moving on to the next question. So this is, I'm trying to put it into one. Rashid asks, Liquidity V2 has the market-driven rate, but their approach is different through user set rates. It will be interesting to hear the advantages and drawbacks of their approach compared to Vesu's fully market-driven and totally immutable and governance-free.
Yeah, so if I understood well, Liquidity V2, right, which has made a lot of noise. Yep, they have a user set model, right? So as a user, you set your interest rate, and then depending on the rate that you set, depending on how much you are willing to actually pay for your loan, the risk of you being redeemed against is lower, right? So you can kind of buy yourself more um, uh, more certainty around when your position is redeemed against. Both models, you could argue, are autonomous, right? In the sense that there is no governance involved. For Liquidity, it's users who define the rates. For Vesu and other markets, it's the interest rate model. The one thing, why what Liquidity does is not really relevant for us is there is no redemptions on traditional lending markets, right? There is only supply and demand. And so if you would put in place a model where the user defines their rates, it would mean it's kind of a peer-to-peer model. So you create kind of orders. I'm willing to borrow at this rate, and then another user on a regular lending market would then have to take this order, which hasn't proven very successful for DeFi. So I think the model that Liquidity V2 implements makes a lot of sense for a CDP. But for regular lending markets like Vesu, it hasn't really proven very successful. Yeah.
Mm. Well, thank you, Niels, for answering these two questions. Unfortunately, we cannot take more because we're running out of time. So thank you again for the workshop on building DeFi on Starknet. For those who are listening to us, if you have any questions about DeFi or Vesu protocol, don't forget to join the Beetlebox Discord channel. We have a dedicated DeFi support channel there with the Vesu team and mentors ready to assist you. Thank you again for, I would like to thank Vesu for leading the DeFi track, as well as to Pragma and Bravos for their contributions. In addition to the DeFi track, I want to mention that there are two more exciting challenges for you to explore. These are open challenges. And the one is called Build with Pragma Oracle, and the other one is Enhance Your DApp with Bravos. Both challenges are open for participation for the DeFi track as well as for other tracks. In terms of resources and materials, everything is available on the Biddlebox platform. So you can find on each challenge all the materials and links needed for that particular challenge. And I think that's roughly it. Coming up in just a few minutes, we're gonna have a workshop on planning a go-to-market strategy. So stay tuned for that. And once again, Niels, thank you again for joining. Thank you for the participants for joining, and I hope you had fun today.
Thank you, and bye everyone.
Thank you. Bye bye.